And welcome, everybody, to another amazing week right here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Heck of a show for you here today. First, we're going to start you off here. Kentucky Department of Education ringing the alarm as the federal government is clawing back COVID money. You may say, wait a second here. COVID was like 4 years ago that this money was handed out. What are they clawing back? Why haven't they spent COVID money already if, well, COVID's kind of an old news thing? At least all those that got COVID wrong would hope that you view it as a old news thing, of course. Well, we will be taking a dig into that. Also, I made a post on social media regarding a protest I saw over the weekend. Some people on the right and left, of course, the left always upset, but some people on the right also upset over the post. I will defend myself because I'm always right. Also, we have here a story regarding Ford handing off part of that battery plant to Nissan. That's a good idea, right? So we'll have that and so many more other stories here today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Before I start digging, though, into any of that, I wanted to talk first about this interesting article that certainly talks about what you would call the future of the Democrat Party. Because, well, nobody's bothering to go ahead and talk to the Democrats about their squandering and struggle in order to be relevant. And recently, WHAS 11 decided they were going to write a hard-hitting article about it. Let's take a look at what they had to write here and cover here, because it's a little more hopeful than maybe they should be. So it's headline here: Democrats hear rural voices. Appalachia may be a template for taking back Washington. Democrats' path to power may start here, one small group meeting at a time. And then they share a picture here of Kentucky Democratic Party Chairman Coleman Eldridge addresses a rural listening tour gathering in Paintsville, Kentucky. This is by, of course, the Associated Press wrote this. They bothered to send somebody out to this little Democrat gathering and listen to what the Democrat listening tour sounds like, even though it seems like it's more of a speaking tour, of course. But they come out and give a little speech here in Paintsville, Kentucky. This is from the article now. Janet Lynn Stumbo leaned on her cane and surveyed the 24 or so voters who'd convened in a small Appalachian town to meet with the chair of the Kentucky Democrat Party. A former Kentucky Supreme Court justice, the 70-year-old Stumbo, said the event was the biggest Democrat gathering I've ever seen in Johnson County, an enclave where Republican Donald Trump got 85% of the vote last November. So they take a county that went 85% for Trump, and they're doing this rural listening tour to try to win back the area. They say Paintsville was the latest stop on the state's party's rural listening tour, a periodic effort to visit overwhelmingly white, culturally conservative towns of the kind where Democrats once competed and Republicans now dominate nationally. Now, maybe, throwing this out there for you Democrats, if you're trying to win back what you call rural areas and you're doing your rural listening tour, perhaps you shouldn't start by describing them as overwhelmingly white. Maybe that's the entire problem with why you're losing these people. It's not that they're not mostly white. They probably are. All these areas you're going to are mostly white. But the fact that they're white isn't necessarily why they're not voting for you. It's because you refuse to let go of this kind of race politics that is leading to these individuals in these quote unquote white areas to not vote Democrat. They themselves don't care. It's not like they sit there and they say, well, I'm white, so that means I got to vote Republican, much the same way that, of course, the Democrat Party tries to cudgel other minorities into voting for their awful politicians and policies. No, That's not the case at all. It would be a good start for you as the Democrat Party if you didn't think of them as white voters. How do we reach out to white voters or black voters or any kind of voters, and instead start looking at them as just simply voters with their individual concerns that far, far go beyond your identity politics garbage that you try to peddle out there. But we continue here with the AP's article. They say Democrats' path back to power may start here, one small meeting at a time, because it'll be difficult, if not impossible, for the party to regain the U.S. Senate control or win the presidency without competing harder for rural and small-town voters. Keep in mind, this is a national news publication writing about what they admitted was like 24 people, 24 people in Paintsville. I think I did an event when I was running for state treasurer in Paintsville. More than 24 people showed up to the simple state treasurer's event I did. I mean, they're like, oh, this is the biggest Democrat gathering I've ever seen in Johnson County, as it has like 26 people at it. Literally 26. And probably if I was to guess, so we have at least one or two reporters probably there. We had the Democrat Party chair. He probably brought around 3 or 4 people. So out of the 24, 25 people there, 6, 7 of them work either are being paid to be there. They work for the Democrat Party or they are the press. So they're being paid to be there most likely. So now you have 18 actual people showing up that might represent 10 to 12 households, maybe. And they're like, this is big. This is how we're going to win them back. We got 12 households. And I tell you what, eventually you're right. That could grow into a movement and you could gain power, but it would take you 50 years if that's the best you can come up with. But yeah, here they are, the like straight face. Like, imagine if Republicans were quote unquote out of power and we're trying to bring in and excite a voting electorate, such as the cities. And they go to hold events in these cities, listening tour events in the cities. And a proportionate amount of people show up. Only 100 people, let's say, show up in one of these city areas they're trying to target. The response to that would not nearly be, well, this is their path to victory, these small little tours. They'd be like, oh, they have no chance. They're so small, unable to. And it's this kind of media bias that causes, we're seeing backlash to it at the national level when we look at of course, the Biden story, the media's refusal to even cover the fact that they got that so wrong. And it causes people to lose trust in it. But also, it's a joke. This is a joke. You're writing a story about 24 people showing up to a Democrat Party meeting talking about how this is their future politics. It's not their future. It's not, because the problem the Democrats have is that their electorate is not these people. That's why only 24 people show up in a small town to a meeting with the state chair. It's not that they necessarily hate Democrats even per se. It's because of the policies. And your listening tour clearly isn't sinking in because you're continuing to as a party and as a group of voters to do the kinds of things that lead to individuals to look at you and say, those people are crazy and have no idea how to win back voters. Because you know what you shouldn't be doing is you shouldn't be sitting there calling all the people who voted for Trump. If you're trying to win them back, you shouldn't be calling the people who voted for him bigots and Nazis and everything else, which is all the Democrats can do. And that brings me to a protest I saw in Lexington. We'll be talking about that after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So over the weekend, I was out just driving around with my wife, enjoying the day. It's a nice day, Saturday, of course. Wasn't too hot, not too cold. Wasn't too sunny, not too cloudy. It was truly a perfect day, I believe, on a Saturday. So I was out with my wife, having some fun out on the town there. And we were in Hamburg area of Lexington, and we came across a group of protesters. At least that's what they'd call themselves, protesters. And there's about a dozen kind of spread around the corner, holding up various signs and protesting Trump just in general, nothing specific. And I shared this post on my social media of 3 of the women who were involved. And you can see a sign behind them that says, "No king, no dictator, separate but equal branches. This is protect our Constitution, protect our democracy," is what the big sign says behind them, despite the fact that they're incorrect on several things. Actually, our government was not supposed to be separate but equal branches. Actually, Congress, the branch of the people, is supposed to be more powerful than any of the other branches, as in Congress is the only ones who can remove judges, remove presidents. Congress has control of the purse strings, can decide to defund you if they want to. That all lies with Congress. Congress is supposed to be the most powerful, despite the fact that it seems like they have large part given up their responsibilities to the other 2 branches, but they were supposed to be. But anyways, besides the fact that they're just constitutionally inaccurate in what they're saying, despite any of that at all, I shared the photo because these people are ridiculous, and with the caption of "Happening now in Lexington, childless cat ladies have gathered by the dozen to protest Trump and let everyone know they have nothing better to do with their lives on a beautiful Saturday." Now, of course, many conservatives found this funny and chimed in with their own comments on their activities and behaviors. The fact that sometimes the stereotype is just too on the nose, of course. But there was, of course, a few of the people on the left and even a few so-called Republicans, self-identified Republicans. Those they so-called as in they're not really Republicans. I mean, so-called as in they're calling themselves Republicans. We're not very happy about the post itself. And to both of them, I do have a few comments to make, defending, I guess, myself and talking about the issue overall here. First, I want to go through a few of these comments from, the Democrats who took issue with it, the leftists that took issue with it. They're mainly like, "Oh, you're being mean. How dare you be mean to people? They're just voicing their opinion. They should be allowed to speak their opinion without being made fun of," and blah, 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 blah. Ignoring the fact, and I'm going to circle back around to this point, ignoring the fact that these people who the leftists are trying to defend is just voicing their opinion. One of the signs they were holding was calling Trump and Trump supporters Nazis, which goes to my first segment about the listening tour. Perhaps if you want to win back Trump voters, you shouldn't start by calling them all Nazis and calling the people that vote for him Nazis and calling Trump a Nazi, implying that they voted for literally Hitler. That doesn't sound like a great way to win people back. And to you leftists that want to say that calling them childless cat ladies, which I'm sure is factually accurate, and we'll get to that here in a second. Those who want to get upset about that, I would say to you on the leftists, you have absolutely no room to talk. If you want political decorum, you want people to disagree but get along, how about you don't start by trying to attack Republicans for calling out individuals holding signs, calling them Nazis. Literal Nazis committed a Holocaust, killed millions. World wars fought because of Nazis. One way or another, people died. Agreed upon by most people that they're the worst villains of history. Maybe the communists should be considered that. They killed more. But anyways, regardless, considered the worst villains of history by many people. And you're literally calling people you just politically disagree with that. And yet, you're upset over being called childless cat ladies. Save it. Okay? Save it. Now, I do want to talk to because there's a few conservatives who, I guess at least Republicans, that took issue with it. Some saying, don't be hating on cat ladies. I'm a cat mom and I voted for Trump. Another one saying that that they have a child that has left the home and have cats, so they take offense to it. Ignoring the fact that you are by definition not a childless cat lady if you've had children that have left the home. And I think this goes into why this retort or this statement, because it was originally said by J.D. Vance when he said that this country is being run by childless cat ladies. And, people scoffed at it or the leftists tried to make it really offensive. Oh, you're anti-woman by saying it. That's what they called me, anti-woman, calling them childless cat ladies, of course. But I think we need to boil down on what he was really saying. See, the reason why, at least for somebody like me, that kind of like, oh, that perfectly encapsulates the problem of what's going on here on the left, at least, is that they're actually talking about a really important political issue. Because when J.D. Vance said it the first time, and he backed off because, of course, everybody got upset. Well, it's funny because it's kind of trolling, but it draws out an important point about childless liberal women running the world and why that's such a problem. Because objectively, first, it's true. If Democrats are in power, childless women are the base of that party. In fact, if we look at some recent data, we see that 72% of single women identify themselves as Democrat. 72% of single women say they're Democrats. There is no other group, like literally married women lean Republican, married men lean Republican, divorced men, divorced women, divorced men lean Republican, divorced women only slightly lean Democrat, according to Pew Research here. But when we go into the only people that are like heavy Democrat are people who say they aren't married but have a partner, and of course they're liberal. I mean, anybody who self-identifies as saying, "Oh, I have a partner," is clearly not a conservative. And then widowed lean Republican, both widower, and a widow and a widowee. What is it? A man is a widower. Yeah. Both of them lean Republican, actually. It's only single women that have this, and gay people, have this vast draw towards Democrats. So they truly are making up the base. That's it. Single women and gay people. And what's interesting about both those groups, and this is what J.D. Vance was hitting upon, is both of those groups, by polling data, one, don't have children, vast majority of them, and two, they're not very religious. Well, some of them may go to something they consider a church. It has twisted the Bible so much so to the point that the belief of God, they don't exactly know what they believe. They don't even know if they believe in an afterlife. They don't know if anything else matters on this planet other than themselves, and that's the real problem. They have no hard religion. They have no greater calling. This is it for them. So it's not just if you're a childless woman over the age of 50, you're not welcome in the Republican Party. It's not that at all. You have to also it's easily encapsulated with the childless cat lady, but you also need to have a weird warped view of religion. You have to have the kind of religion that has cooked up, that you say you're a Christian, but you ignore all the Bible, like that kind of warped religion is what I'm talking about. And that's an important point, because those are individuals that literally don't care about the next generation. And that's the point J.D. Vance is trying to make, and that's the point I'm trying to make when we're pointing out that these are, quote-unquote, childless cat ladies. It's not necessarily to be mean or funny or anything else. It is funny. But that's not necessarily it. It's to point out the fact that, objectively speaking, large amounts of them are childless. By choice. And single. Sometimes by choice. Because you have to think, what kind of policies are single, over 50, childless, non-religious women going to want? They're sitting there, they're worried, they're at that age where they start worrying about their own death. They're not comfortable in their religion, where they feel accepting of their own death. They're worried about getting older. Who's going to take care of them, of course? They're worried about them. Now, they may try to wrap it up as, I worry about this generation and and this person. But what they're really worried about, if anything, is just making sure more unhappy, single, religionless, childless women in the Democrat Party are manufactured by passing things like abortions and other things like that, because the problem, see, that also falls to why they're so for abortion and why they fight on these issues, even though they themselves aren't going to have kids anytime soon. And it's because they want to make sure more people like them, childless women, exist. That is their next generation for them. That is, and this is why they're so heavily involved. This is why they are the base, the volunteer group of the Democrat Party. Go to any Democrat Party event now, especially now, and look around. You'll see mainly 50-something or older women in the crowd. That is what you'll see, because they have nothing else. And who would want those kinds of people making policy? That's the real problem here. You see, when you have children, you're worried about the future. When you're religious, you have greater callings on this earth. Politics doesn't consume you in that way. You know, people like me are politically involved because we're worried about our children's future. And so we are willing to suffer now so that way our children have better lives. Well, these kinds of people drawing policy, they don't want to suffer now because they don't care about what comes after them. That's the point. They can't give two cares about who comes next. And letting them lead policy means they're willing to look your young children in the eye and destroy this country through excess spending, through demanding more and more and more out of your pockets, because all that matters to them is them. And then they will sit there and call you the bad person because they can't live with themselves. They can't look at themselves in the mirror. You know you're not the bad person. You actually found somebody, most of you, if you're married and older, of course, you found somebody to wake up next to you every day. You can't be all that bad. And if you haven't, but you still are active in your community, you still have lots of friends outside of politics and everything else, that's great. But these people that this is all they have, standing on a street corner on a beautiful Saturday, holding up a sign calling Republicans Nazis. That's all they got. No wonder why they're miserable. No wonder why nobody wants to be around them. No wonder why they're more than willing to steal from future generations. They don't like anybody. And nobody likes them. That's what the comment means. Well, coming up after this, we'll be digging into Ford. Battery plant trouble afoot. We'll have that after this short break. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Rewind with me here to 2021, fall of 2021. You may remember, or you may not, at the time, of course, the COVID vaccine was kind of fresh out, and the hospitals, of course, were starting to mandate that their nurses and doctors and everything take the vaccine or face being fired. And in response to this, the governor started mobilizing the National Guard to help fill hospitals, and the COVID shoring up these hospitals due to COVID became an utmost importance publicly. And so they went ahead and they called a special session. They said in order to help give schools more flexibility during COVID, and in order to also help these hospitals make ends meet, of course, because they got to pay people more and because they were firing people at the same time. And there's a lot to consider, I guess you could say. Well, at least that's what they publicly told you. But what came out later on in the governor's election in 2023 during the debates, when Beshear was talking about the Ford battery plant deal, which came in the form and was passed during the special session in a bill called Senate Bill 5 in the 2021 special session. And he came out and admitted that that special session wasn't due to COVID. It wasn't due to hospitals needing help. They had the special session for the Ford battery plant. And boy, oh boy, did they give them some money here. So the deal said that if Ford went ahead and spent at least $2 billion, they would give Ford $350 million in a forgivable loans. So that's just $350 million cash. They would pay off a piece of property for Ford to the tune of about $30 million and then give it to them. They would then spend $20 million on a skills building program for Ford and then offer them another couple of million, 10 million or so for some other training programs, all in giving Ford $410 million to build the battery plant. But the only thing about this deal, keep in mind too, they only required them to put forward $2 billion. Ford got more than that from the federal government to build battery plants. So Ford was really out nothing to go ahead and build this place. And, but that's something we found out after the fact, who was getting this money, because as it turns out at the time, not as it turns out, this isn't new news. I knew this at the time. I posted about it at the time. I will remember this as one of the greatest political. It was another one of those eye-opening moments for me when I realized just how corrupt and awful everybody is. And so they're holding this special election or special session, and they go to vote on this bill. The only thing is none of the legislators knew what company they were giving the money to or what they were building. They were told it would be the next Toyota. That's what they kept being told. It's like, look, you need to vote for this. If you don't, you're going to regret it because this will be the next Toyota. Only a few members of the legislature and leadership knew exactly what was being built and who was building it. And of course, some members of the governor's administration as well. They said, look, you're going to want to vote for this. And so it passes with only about 10 or so total people across the Senate and the House voting no. That's right. The vast majority, like 90% of our legislators, voted to give unknown entity $410 million to build they don't know what. Well, then it comes out it's the Ford battery plant. And at the time, the legislators acted pretty excited about it. I wasn't, because when I heard that, I was like, oh no. Because this isn't the next Toyota. This isn't Ford moving their F-150 plant here. This isn't Ford building moving their car manufacturing here. It wasn't that. It was Ford going into a new venture that you have no idea what the future is, and that is to build batteries. And so how's it going now? Well, as it turns out, Ford has turned to Nissan, and they have admitted that they do not plan on using a good chunk of the factory we, the taxpayers, through federal government money and state government money, have built for them. They're not even going to use it in the foreseeable future. And so they've decided to give over a portion of the factory to Nissan to use. That's not who we cut the deal with. I'm unclear if Nissan's paying rent to Ford. It's nice of us to go ahead and build a rental property for Ford to turn around and rent out, of course, but they're going to go ahead and rent this property out, about half their property to Nissan, which you may say, well, that's okay. It's still bringing jobs into the area, I guess. I mean, it's not exactly who we gave money to, and sure, Ford may be making money off the rent, but at the same time, at least, we're bringing the jobs in. Maybe Nissan will bring us a lot of great jobs. The only problem for Nissan, this deal with Nissan, is that Nissan is ready to announce here, or is about to announce, or has announced, that it's going to be losing, last year it's posting losses of $5 billion. They said they would only expect $537 million of losses. Instead, it's $5 billion. So that really sounds like the kind of company that I want to definitely be bringing into Kentucky. The kind of company that over the last year has lost 32% of its stock price over the last year. 32%. And is having a lot of financial issues. For comparison, Ford only lost 11% over that same amount of time. And so it really doesn't portray a whole lot of hope necessarily for that battery plant. But yet we haven't seen anybody say, hey, we're sorry. Hey, no legislators have come out and said, I should not have voted for that. In fact, I've only ever heard one legislator admit they shouldn't have voted for it. They said that, as a new legislator, I didn't know what was going on. I voted for it. Looking back, I never should have. And I can honestly say that individual has greatly changed the way they vote. So I believe that given the opportunity, understanding what he understands now, he wouldn't have voted for it. But other than that, out of all these legislators, I've never heard him once say, yeah, this was a dumb vote. Yeah, we really messed this up. Now, what the rumor mill, of course, says will happen with this plant is that Ford will just move their truck manufacturing plant that they have currently in Louisville to this new plant and have that take over and then just get rid of that plant in Louisville. Some other company will come in and take it over. I've heard FedEx or UPS may take it. Somebody's going to take over that building, they say, but Ford will just go ahead and move their truck manufacturing there, which means we will have essentially given Ford $410 million of taxpayer funds to keep their truck plant in Kentucky, just to keep it here, which would drive the question of how much tax revenues has Ford generated for Kentucky, all in, like total amount of tax revenues, all in has that truck plant generated. I'm sure it's a lot, no joke. I'm sure it's a lot, but when we start talking about handing out $500 million to private companies, I would expect some sort of math here to say, look, since that truck plant's been there, and it's been there a long time, so it would not be unreasonable to me for them to say, look, $1 billion it's made us, so we're going to give up half of that to keep that truck plant here. Like, that's like an honest conversation. Let's have that. But every single time a new project comes into Kentucky, a big project like that, they're like, oh, it's the next Toyota. It's going to be the next Toyota. You know, I don't remember Toyota ever subleasing out parts of their factories to a competitor in especially the field of electric vehicles. I don't ever remember that. I must have missed that time, but you know, what do I know? Well, coming up after this, we'll be digging into the Kentucky Department of Education is ringing the alarm bell, says, hey, look, this COVID money that the federal government's taking back, it's a big problem for our schools. We'll go into some of these projects and ask some questions like, what does this have to do with COVID after this short break? And you're back here on this final segment of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I wanted to go over this story here. I found it interesting. It deals with the Kentucky Department of Education, and they're upset. They're mad, of course, at the Trump administration. No surprise there, but they are upset because the Trump administration is saying, look, it's been 4 years since COVID. You guys have had all this COVID money. You haven't spent it. And if you haven't spent it, you haven't used it yet, we're clawing it back because you're not using it for... If you are still in the process of spending that money, you're not using it for COVID. The money was not put together so you could build new buildings. It was not put together so you could buy buses. It was not put together so you could do all these other things that you just want to do. You were given the money specifically in order to combat children being out of school. The point of the money was to get you to bring children back to school. So that was mass and ventilation system upgrades and all these other things, laptops, so you could do remote learning programs. That was the point of the money, not for whatever else you feel like spending it on. And so they're saying, look, we're going to pull back this money. And so they've told Kentucky, we will not be paying out potentially $56 million because we still hadn't spent $56 million of COVID money. And so, of course, the Kentucky Department of Education is upset about it. Bashir's upset about it. They're writing these sob stories. Let me go into some of these projects, okay, for you here, okay? So here's Letcher County Public Schools. This is from the article here, Herald Leader. Letcher County Public Schools had used some of its $3 million in COVID money to buy 25 new buses after multiple buses were destroyed during the 2022 flooding. Now, granted, awful your buses were destroyed during the flooding. It should I get it. You need buses. I do wonder real quick, what the insurance payouts were on these 25 buses. Surely you had you had some sort of property coverage on those buses that it wasn't covered by that coverage, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe you didn't have flood coverage on your buses. Okay. And that absolutely awful. You need money for buses. I get it. However, you were not given $3 million. By definition, you are not using the money you were given for the reason you were given it. You're given $3 million in COVID money to deal with COVID, not to buy buses. You're given this money, in 2020? And you're using it in 2022 to buy buses due to a flood. That has nothing to do with COVID. No wonder why the federal government doesn't want to give you the money. And I'm not saying that you don't need I'm not saying you don't need the money. I'm not saying budgets aren't tight. I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is definitionally, the Trump administration's right. You're not spending this money on COVID, but they're not the only ones. No, we have many schools here to kind of go into a few of it. We have Boone County had $1.2 million in funding rescinded because Boone County had already paid $600,000 upfront costs to purchase high-quality instructional resources in math and language arts for elementary school kids. The rest of the funds the district received were already encumbered for purchases similarly related to accelerating learning post-COVID, while Boone County Superintendent Jeff Haswald said the district's reserve fund can help cushion the loss. It's going to reduce funding for future needs. So we are 3-4 years in, and he's talking about spending funds for math and language arts for elementary school kids. Helpful, I get it. A lot of those kids, some of those kids, 3 years worth of those kids weren't in school during COVID, but okay. Carter County has $4.1 million rescinded. Carter County Schools budget approximately $13 million of its COVID relief funding for site development for construction of a new high school and career technical center. So they gave you $13 million. You said, you know what? We're going to build a new school with that. We have Carvana Independent spent $269,000 to buy 2 school buses. Now, of course, they're attaching sob stories to each of these, but my point here is $7.9 million in funding rescinded because Christian County's funding was to help the construction of a new Christian County high school. The new school would consolidate 2 existing high schools. It's just to consolidate a high school. Now, many people in the area of Christian County, too, don't want the school being built, don't want this consolidated school. Those longtime listeners of the show know I've had on some people from that area, from the Hopkinsville, Christian County area, and they have made it clear they are very much so against the consolidation of the school. It's a boondoggle. It's useless. It's not needed. And now they're getting almost $8 million of funding for that school taken away because it was supposed to go to COVID, not building a new consolidated school that the community doesn't even want. Clinton County, $1.4 million in funding rescinded because it is in the process of replacing damaged and moldy roofs at several district buildings and updating the lighting in the auditorium at Clinton County Early Childhood Center. Now, granted, I understand those may be very necessary things. I'm not saying they're wasting the money there. Now, keep in mind, money's fungible. You never know, we're using that money for this, really necessary thing so we can free up money for these other unnecessary things. This happens all the time. I remember I was sitting when I was running for state senate, I was sitting in a city council meeting, I believe, in Lancaster, Kentucky there in Garrett County. And there they were discussing, there was an issue regarding the lights out at the ball fields. And then they also had a sewer system. And they had the sewer system they needed replaced over time. And then they also had these lights at the ball field they needed fixed or replaced. It was really unclear to me too. Exactly. There's like a weird thing going on with the county used to have these baseball fields. They just put in new lights. So it was a little bit of a weird situation going on with their Parks and Rec as far as it goes. And I guess Congressman Brett Guthrie had asked them for any projects they want federally funded so he could go ahead and put it in some funding bills. Literally asking, not them asking the congressman to help them out because they were in a pinch, but the congressman coming to them, asking them if they have any projects they want funded so he could go ahead and put it into the bill, bring back home the bacon. That's also its own kind of issue here because obviously as we talk about what's going on federally with our funding issues and how we're going into debt and these Congress people just don't want to cut funding. They're literally like trying to spend more of the federal dollars, but regardless, and they said, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to have them fund the sewer system or the lights? And we could just speed the light project up out at the baseball fields. Now, I understand well-lit, nice baseball fields is an important thing that the community wants. I hear you 100%. 100%. And it's a very expensive project. It's millions of dollars. I hear you. Objectively speaking, though, and you all may not want to hear this, but today's the day of giving you truth, I guess, because I know I've already said several things a lot of people don't want to hear. But objectively speaking, sewer system is a more important part of the city than the lighting at the ball field. Sewer system is a need. What do we do with our waste? What happens when you flush the toilet? Water system. How do we get water of our spigot? Right? That's something that's a need by the city citizens that the city provides services of. And while lights out at the ball field would be great, there are ways to plan around it to make sure you're not out there at night. And while granted, it would be nice and maybe people may see it as necessary to have their kids able to play baseball at night, I would argue that being able to have a place for your waste and fecal matter to go when you flush the toilet is objectively more important to the entire community than night baseball games. And so instead of saying, great, let's just get all the sewer projects done we need to be done, they said, no, let's spend the money on the baseball field lights. That was kind of the discussion. I don't know how to end it up, but the way it was going, the way the discussion was going, they wanted to spend the money on the baseball field lights instead of on the sewer systems. And that is the way a lot of these people think. And that is worth us having a conversation about when it comes to our government and how it's acting and what it's funding and what it's putting money into. Because not all things are created equal. And I go through this list of school after school after school, talking about things like, Laurel County. They were building multi-purpose facilities at 2 district high schools, building gyms and classrooms and cafeteria space and all those things. And I hear you that those school districts believe those were absolutely needed. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. We can have a discussion about that. But at the end of the day, the money that was given to you was not for that. It's for COVID relief. We inflated our currency. We blew out our debt as a country, not so you can get new school buses after a flood that should have been covered by insurance, but not so you can consolidate 2 high schools because you just feel like having a nicer facility, but because we're supposedly facing a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic and to fight it. Apparently, we gave you too much money. They're clawing it back. And, of course, the Democrats have issues with it. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I thank y'all so much for joining me. We'll see you back here next week. I hope you have a great rest of your day.